Hi, I'm Rowden. My brother took the $7 million car I just bought and handed it to his wife's younger brother as a gift. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, It's theirs now. You're not allowed to touch it." And I smiled, I nodded. But behind that smile was something he didn't see coming. This isn't just about a car, it's about a lifetime of betrayal dressed up as brotherhood. It's about being the quiet one, the one they thought would never fight back. But when the truth finally broke loose, it didn't just expose him, it uncovered all of them. So ask yourself this: what happens when the good brother stops staying silent and decides to end the game on his own terms? I pulled up just as the sun began slipping behind the tall palms lining Zarek's estate. The place looked like it was plucked out of a lifestyle magazine. Perfect hedges, glimmering windows, valet at the gate, like we were some Hollywood elite. It was Kentley's graduation party. I was late, on purpose. I parked in the side lot, away from the noise, away from the family. I didn't need the fanfare. Truth is, I wasn't here for Kentley. I wasn't here for Zarek or Melina or anyone who'd forgotten how many times I'd stood quietly in the shadows while they took credit for everything I gave. I came because I needed closure, for me. The McLaren Speedtail I'd bought was parked right up front under a white canopy, its polished surface practically glowing in the California sun. It wasn't meant to be flashy. It was, for me, a win I needed, something to say. I made it on my own terms. I walked through the garden, half smiles and stiff nods from the crowd. Most of them barely remembered I existed unless they needed something. Zarek spotted me and raised a hand, too busy entertaining the mayor or one of his donors to break away. I didn't mind. I found my way to the back patio where the speeches had already started. An old habit I'd dropped years ago, but I needed something to ground me. My mother's lighter, wooden with faded engravings from the 60s, clicked once, then again. The flame shook slightly in the breeze before I brought it to the end of the cigarette. I took a slow drag, exhaled, said nothing. Kentley ran to the car like a kid on Christmas. Melina tossed him the keys. The crowd went wild. Phones out, Instagram stories, hashtags probably already flying. I stayed where I was. Zarek came up beside me, glass of bourbon in hand, leaned in close, and said under his breath, "It's theirs now. You are not allowed to touch it." His tone wasn't mocking. It was cold. Final, like he was setting the boundary in cement. I looked him dead in the eyes and gave a half smile. "Of course," I said quietly. "Wouldn't dream of it." He clapped me on the shoulder like we were in on the same joke. "We weren't." Kentley revved the engine, grinning like he'd just been knighted. Melina posed next to the car for pictures. People laughed, shouted compliments, champagne corks popped, a damn celebration, over something that wasn't theirs to celebrate. I watched them all, and I remembered something. Christmas, years ago, I was 6. I got a toy train I'd been begging for. Within hours, Zarek broke it. When I cried, Mom said, "Let him have it. He's older. You'll understand when you grow up." I did grow up. I understood more than they thought I did. But this wasn't about a toy anymore. This was years of being the one they assumed would always stay quiet. The dependable one, the one who never made a scene. Not this time. As Kentley and Melina strutted toward the McLaren, arms linked, giggling like they'd just pulled off the heist of the century, I pulled out my phone. I didn't unlock it, just tapped twice on the side and nodded discreetly toward the security booth by the hedges. No one noticed. Yet, the air shifted the moment Kentley slid into the driver's seat. His hand wrapped around the wheel like he'd earned it, like he had any idea what it meant to work for something with your own 2 hands. Melina stood beside him, already halfway posing for another round of pictures. People circled around them, some with champagne in hand, others holding up phones like they were filming a moment that belonged on a highlight reel. He pressed the ignition button. Nothing. Not a sound. Not a cough. Not even a flicker from the dashboard. A few people chuckled. Someone said, "Maybe it's one of those voice start cars. Try asking it nicely." A small ripple of laughter followed, shallow and awkward. Kentley tried again. Still dead. Zarek walked over, brows knit. "Is the battery dead?" he asked, loud enough for the crowd to hear. He looked at me like I was supposed to step in and save the moment. I didn't move, just took a slow walk toward the car, phone still in my hand. I didn't rush. Let them sit in it. Let the tension build the way it was supposed to. When I got close enough, I stopped, looked directly at Kentley, then at Melina, then finally at Zarek. I took a breath, not dramatic, just steady. It won't start because it's not yours to start. The crowd fell quiet. I held up my phone, flipped the screen toward them. The car is electronically locked, GPS tethered. Title's in my name. Insurance too. No one drives it unless I approve the driver through this app. I didn't. Melina blinked. Her smile flickered for the first time all evening. Zarek didn't speak. His mouth opened slightly, but he shut it just as fast. He looked down at the car like he didn't recognize it anymore. Are you kidding me? Kentley scoffed, stepping out. Uncle Rowden, you literally gave it to me. I raised an eyebrow. When exactly did I say that? Everyone heard it. Every single one of them had been clapping moments earlier, celebrating a gift I never gave. Now all they could do was stare. Zarek stepped forward, voice low and tense. You embarrassed me. In front of our family. In front of my colleagues. I didn't flinch. I wasn't the one who tried to donate something I didn't own. He leaned in closer. You think you're being clever. This makes you look petty. Maybe. But at least I'm not a liar. His jaw clenched. That's the thing about Zarek. He's always been good at putting on a face. But when you've known someone your whole life, you learn the cracks in their armor. And right now, they were showing. He turned back to the crowd, quickly plastering on a politician's grin. Folks, there's been a little misunderstanding. The paperwork just didn't catch up yet, that's all. I stepped beside him, held up the phone again. No misunderstanding. I bought this car, paid in full, for myself. And since we're clearing things up, here's the title. I swiped to the DMV digital copy, and the receipt from the dealership. And here's the insurance under my name. All verifiable. Silence. Even the music that had been playing in the background was off now. No one moved. Some people looked down at their glasses. Others looked at Zarek like they were seeing him for the first time. Melina's voice cut through. You always do this, Rowden. You wait until the moment's big enough, and then you pull a stunt. I turned to her. You mean, I wait until someone tries to steal something I own and call it generosity? You didn't have to humiliate your own brother, she snapped. No, I said calmly, but he didn't have to pretend I was too weak to say anything. And yet, here we are. Her lips tightened, but she said nothing else. People began walking away, some awkwardly, pretending they'd just remembered a phone call or needed to check on their kids. Others stayed rooted in place, unsure whether to witness the rest or retreat. The party had officially died. Zarek looked like he wanted to say something, maybe yell, maybe apologize, but he said neither. I didn't wait. I walked toward the small driveway loop. My actual car, my everyday car, a modest black Audi, was parked just beyond the hedges. I turned back, one hand on the door handle, and said loud enough for everyone still standing there, "You can't take what you never earned." Then I got in and drove off. The sun had started dipping past the rooftops, casting a long, amber trail across the street. As I turned out of the estate, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The party that had been so full of cheers and confetti half an hour ago now looked like someone had cut the cord to its electricity. And in a way, I had, but not out of anger. I wasn't mad. I wasn't even trying to get back at them. For the first time, I just didn't let it slide. I thought I could just let it go, move on, keep the peace. I was wrong. The walls of my home office had never felt closer than they did that night. The street outside was quiet, but in my mind, voices echoed like a choir of ghosts. My brother Melina, my own silence trying to scream louder than the memories. I didn't touch the bed, just paced the hardwood floor in my bare feet, sipping slowly from a glass of water that never seemed to go empty. A soft jazz record played in the background. Coltrane, something mellow. The kind of music you put on when you don't want silence, but you can't handle words either. I sat down at my desk. The warm glow from the desk lamp cast a circle of light over my scattered thoughts. Old Polaroids, a few handwritten letters from Mom, screenshots of messages from Zarek that looked supportive on the surface but always came with some cost underneath. I tapped my phone and pulled up an old voicemail, my mother's voice, still clear as ever even though she'd been gone 5 years. Rowden, I know you're tired. I see it in your eyes. But don't let them turn your kindness into something they own. That's not love, baby. That's use. I leaned back in my chair, let the words sink in. I didn't cry, but I did feel a strange stillness, the kind that comes when grief finally makes space for clarity. I looked through a dusty album she'd kept from when we were kids. Zarek and me sitting on the porch, knees scraped, arms linked like we had each other's backs. But those photos lied, or maybe they only told half the story, because then the next image flashed in my mind. Not a photo, but a memory. Christmas morning, I was 12. I'd begged for a remote control car all year. Mom saved up, I knew she did. She handed me the box with that proud smile, one of the few times we had something nice under the tree. By lunchtime, Zarek's friend's son, some kid from their church, was holding it, driving it around the living room like it had always been his. "He didn't get anything," Mom whispered. "Be a good little brother. You'll get another one someday." I never did, and I never said a word. It wasn't about the toy. It was about what it taught me. That my happiness was negotiable, that my boundaries were optional, that keeping the peace meant swallowing disappointment and calling it maturity. But the car, the McLaren, that wasn't about a vehicle either. It was just the latest chapter in a lifetime of being asked to step aside so someone else could shine. I stared at the wooden lighter sitting on the edge of my desk, the same one I used at the party. She gave it to me on my 40th birthday, said, "I know you don't smoke anymore, but keep this with you. It's a reminder you can light your own fire when you need to." Funny how some gifts age better than others. I needed to talk. So I booked a late-night session with Dr. Halpern. I'd been seeing him on and off for almost a decade. He never told me what to do, just asked questions that made me see things I'd spent years avoiding. He appeared on the screen, his salt and pepper beard neatly trimmed, glasses sliding down his nose. "You look wired," he said gently. "I haven't slept," I replied. "But I'm not mad, just clear." He nodded. "That can be more dangerous than anger." I told him everything, the party, the speech, the keys, the silence. He listened, didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned in. "What hurt more? That they tried to steal the car, or that they assumed you wouldn't stop them?" I blinked. "Both," I said, "but mostly that they were right. Until now." He scribbled something on his pad. I hated when he did that. "When you're trained to swallow every injustice," he said, "you forget how to speak up, even when it's time." "Yeah," I muttered. "It's like I've been giving permission by staying quiet." He nodded. "So, what's your line, Rowden? When do you say enough?" The question hung in the air. I didn't answer right away. Later that night, back at my desk, I opened a new document on my laptop. At first, I started typing a message to Zarek. I let the words flow. "You crossed a line. You took something that wasn't yours. You've done it before. You will not do it again." But I deleted it. He didn't need to hear it yet. I needed to. Instead, I wrote something just for me. "From now on, I will not let silence be my signature." I printed it out, folded it neatly, and placed it in the drawer where the lighter lived. That drawer wasn't just wood and metal anymore. It was my line in the sand. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, a soft rumble that promised something more. Then the rain came. Not a storm, just a slow, steady reminder that something had shifted in the air. I closed the window halfway and stood there for a while, watching the water collect on the sill. I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But I knew this much. I wasn't going back to who I was. I didn't plan to confront them that soon, but fate doesn't wait for readiness. The storm outside had rolled out just before sunrise, leaving the streets wet and glistening like someone had polished the whole neighborhood overnight. I'd barely slept, but my phone buzzed at 9:07 a.m. like it had been waiting for the perfect moment to interrupt what little peace I had. It was a message from Zarek. "Dinner tonight at Mom and Dad's. Let's not let small things divide us. Come hungry." No apology, no mention of the car, No acknowledgement that anything unusual had happened. Just another attempt to sweep everything under the rug and smile while doing it. I stared at the message longer than I needed to. The kind of silence that felt heavier than shouting. But eventually I typed back, "See you at 6. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. By the time I arrived at the old family house that evening, the sky had dimmed to that dusky blue that always made the porch light look warmer than it really was. Familiar smells wafted out: roast chicken, buttered green beans, something sweet baking in the oven. You wouldn't have guessed a storm had ever come through. I stepped inside and was met by a chorus of smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. Hugs too tight, voices just a little too cheerful. Everyone was already seated at the long oak dining table, glasses of iced tea sweating on their coasters. Zarek stood up with arms wide like a game show host. "There he is, the man of the hour. Come sit, bro." Melina echoed with a smile that could cut glass. "We saved your seat, right next to Mom." I took my place without a word. My mother patted my hand gently, like she used to when I came home from school with a scraped knee. "It's good to have you here, honey." Small talk started, about the weather, the neighbor's new dog, and a new recipe for corn pudding. It was surreal, like I'd stepped into a sitcom where everyone was pretending we hadn't just had a very public falling out over a multi-million-dollar car. But I knew it was coming. And sure enough, about 20 minutes into dinner, as the mashed potatoes made their second round, Zarek cleared his throat like he was about to deliver a toast. "You know," he began, "since we're all here as a family, I think it's important to talk about what happened last weekend." A subtle hush settled over the table. Forks froze midair. I felt my mother's hand tighten around her napkin. Zarek continued, eyes flicking toward me with faux concern. "I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding about the car. Emotions were high, but I wish things could have been handled more privately. You kind of made a scene, Rowden." Melina chimed in without missing a beat. "You've been holding on to grudges lately. It's not healthy." Their mother, our mother, looked at me with that weary softness only mothers can wear. "Sweetheart, you've always been the peacekeeper. Maybe it's time to let things go like you used to. It's not worth all this tension." And there it was, the ambush. They'd set the table for dinner, but the main course was character assassination, served warm with a side of gaslighting. I didn't slam my hand on the table. I didn't yell. That's what they expected. I just breathed in slowly and let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. "I paid for that car," I said calmly. "I paid for it with my own money. I didn't sign anything over. I didn't agree to give it away. I didn't even know it was being gifted until I watched it happen, along with the rest of your friends." A few heads turned. No one moved. I continued, eyes still locked on Zarek. "You didn't ask me. You assumed. And that assumption humiliated me. You tried to make a public statement with something that wasn't yours to give." Zarek chuckled nervously. "You're overreacting, man. It's a car." "No," I said. "It's not. It's about respect. Respect isn't maintained by staying silent just to keep peace. That's not family. That's performance." Melina tried to cut in, but I raised a hand, calm, not aggressive. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to set things straight." I looked around the table, face by face. To my father, who sat quietly stirring his tea like it held answers. To my sister-in-law's parents, who avoided my eyes altogether. To my mother, who had always asked me to be the bigger person, even when it meant I disappeared. "I've been quiet for years," I said. "Not because I agreed, but because I thought it was noble to be silent. But all that ever did was teach you I didn't matter. That I'd fold every time you pushed." Zarek leaned back, arms crossed. "You done?" I nodded. "Almost." I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and took a breath. "If you keep pretending I'm the problem, don't be surprised when I stop showing up." The room was so still I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the next room. No one followed me to the door. No one called my name. As I walked to my car, the sound of the door clicking shut behind me felt heavier than any slam. Final, but not vengeful. Just real. I slid into the driver's seat, looked up at the house one last time, and whispered to myself, that was long overdue. I woke up Monday morning to the smell of burnt coffee from the machine in the break room downstairs, and it was early, too early for most of my team to be in yet, which was exactly why I got there when I did. I wanted silence. I wanted a clean start to the week. I wanted to believe I could just keep my head down and move on. But by 8:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. Subject line, performance concerns, immediate attention required. From HR, New Haven Consulting. I clicked it open. My screen went blurry for a second. I blinked fast, trying to bring it back into focus. Inside the email were 2 brief paragraphs, bland corporate language, but every word carried weight like lead. An anonymous complaint has been filed regarding potential mismanagement of sensitive client materials and funds. The source is described as someone personally familiar with your work and family ties. You are being placed on immediate unpaid leave pending review of all relevant documentation. Please report to HR by 9:15 a.m. Anonymous. Family ties. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I couldn't breathe right, but I knew exactly who it was. Zarek, or more precisely one of Zarek's puppets. The hallway to HR was too bright, too quiet. I passed Donna from accounting, who didn't meet my eyes. Brian from legal offered a half nod and turned back to his coffee like it suddenly became fascinating. I stepped into the HR director's office. Evelyn closed the door softly behind me and gestured toward the chair across from hers, like this was just another Monday morning check-in. She read a script, vague language, corporate neutrality. Then finally she said, the complaint outlines discrepancies in a project spreadsheet and external access from an unregistered device. It also mentions behavior that could be interpreted as a conflict of interest involving a family member in a competing firm. I sat there, trying to will myself not to explode. Do you have anything to add, Rowden? I do, I said calmly. I was at my brother's house 2 weeks ago. I used my work account briefly from a shared device, his wife's laptop. It was dumb, I admit, but I didn't share anything. I didn't even think about it. That's the only possible breach. Evelyn blinked. That would align with the date stamp on the flagged login. There was no conflict of interest. I didn't compromise anything. Someone is trying to twist this. She looked at me like she halfway believed me, but policy was policy. You'll be on leave until this is sorted. It will handle account reviews. I nodded once. I stood up slower than usual, like my body was trying to delay the weight of what just landed on me. By noon, I was sitting in my car in the parking garage, engine off, radio silent. I hadn't touched the wheel in 20 minutes. Every second played like a loop, the fake smiles at the family dinner, Zarek's setup, the smug glance from Melina. It was never about the car. This was about erasing me entirely. He wasn't content just making me invisible at home. Now he wanted to cut me off at the knees professionally, make me the unstable one, the liability, the story that gets passed around offices like a warning. I pulled out my phone and called Jamal, my closest friend since college, someone who'd seen me at my worst and didn't flinch. He picked up on the second ring. Yo. I didn't say a word. All he heard was my breathing. After a few seconds, he spoke again. Rowden? Still nothing. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, something would crack. Finally, I whispered, I think I'm done. There was a beat of silence before he said, You're just tired of being decent to people who treat you like dirt. His voice wasn't pitying, just steady, grounded, like a rope thrown into the deep end. I let it go too many times, I muttered. Now they're trying to bury me. Jamal let out a slow exhale. Then it's time to stop letting it go. That night, I was home by 6. I didn't bother turning on the lights. The sun was already dipping low, casting long golden shadows across the living room. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the glass of water I hadn't touched. Then I saw it. An old notebook half tucked beneath a stack of tax envelopes, spiral-bound, worn at the edges. It was my mother's. She used to jot down thoughts, recipes, prayers, sometimes all in the same sentence. I flipped through it without thinking, pages whispering past until one line stopped me cold. Never let your silence become your tombstone. I read it again and again. It was her handwriting. The same looped cursive that signed every one of my birthday cards growing up. The same hand that once held mine after Zarek shoved me into the bushes and got away with it. That line didn't feel like advice anymore. It felt like a warning. I walked into the bathroom, flicked on the light, and stared into the mirror. There was a slight twitch in my jaw, a tightness in my throat I hadn't noticed before, but something else was there too. Resolve. I looked myself in the eye and said aloud, "It's not about the car." I paused. "It's about everything before it." Then I said it again. And this time, I believed it. The morning air was cool, sharp with the smell of wet concrete and faint jasmine. Rain had swept through the city just before sunrise, leaving the streets slick and the sky a dull, heavy gray. I brewed a cup of black coffee, left it untouched on the kitchen counter, then pulled out my phone and made 3 calls, each one sharper than the last. First was my attorney. "Good morning, Craig. I need a cease and desist drafted. 2 parts, one for defamation, the other for unauthorized use of personal property." There was a short pause, then the usual lawyer tone kicked in. "Tell me everything." I didn't hold back. I laid out what Zarek had done, both at the party and at work. Craig was quick. He promised to have a letter by midday. Next, I called Jamal. "I'm in," he said before I could even explain. "Tell me what you need." "Pull the server logs from the 3 days surrounding that login I mentioned. Check for IP traces tied to Melina's home." Quietly. He didn't ask why. That's the kind of friend Jamal was. The third call took a moment longer. I stared at her number for a while before tapping call. Tara, Zarek's former colleague from years ago. The one who left the firm after a falling out that no one ever really explained. I remembered a story she once told at a barbecue about trusting the wrong people with too much access. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Rowden? Tara, I need 5 minutes. And the truth." By 9:30 a.m., the pieces were in motion. Craig had emailed me a sharp professional cease and desist already addressed and printed. I folded it neatly, placed it in an envelope, and slid it into my coat pocket. I didn't drive to Zarek's this time. I walked. Their house sat just 5 blocks from mine. Same neighborhood, same sidewalks, very different worlds. The rain had slowed to a mist, clinging to my jacket like sweat. I reached the doorstep and knocked once. Not hard, not soft, just enough. No answer. I placed the envelope squarely on the doormat and turned to leave. But of course, Melina opened the door right then. She saw the envelope, picked it up, and looked at me like I was a stray dog tracking mud across her designer floors. "Is this supposed to scare us?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I smiled politely. "No, it's supposed to warn you." She scoffed. "Rowden, come on." "Because next time," I said, stepping back, "I won't knock." By early afternoon, the call came, not from Zarek, from our mother. I let it go to voicemail the first time, then the second. On the third, I picked up. "Baby," she said, voice tight, "please don't do this. Don't escalate things." "I'm not," I replied calmly. "I'm protecting myself." Her voice trembled. "You boys are all I have." "I know," I said, but every time I forgave him, I taught him I was disposable. Silence. I'm unlearning that now. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened a new document. Not legal, not angry. Just honest. A professional article. No names, just a story. When the knife comes from the family table. I told the story of betrayal, not the dramatic kind, but the slow erosion of dignity when someone in your circle thinks they're entitled to your silence. I wrote about workplace sabotage and the quiet cost of keeping the peace. I ended with one line. Sometimes, drawing a boundary isn't a war. It's the beginning of survival. I hit post. Within an hour, the notifications started coming in. Messages, comments, shares. People resonated with it, too many people. And Zarek? He knew. So did Melina. So did everyone. By dusk, I sat alone on a park bench, just a few blocks from the office. The rain had picked up again, soft and steady. No one else was around. The world felt muted. I looked up at the gray sky, took a deep breath and whispered, "Let's see if they still play dirty when the lights are on." And I should have known something was coming. Zarek never sat quietly when someone else was holding attention, especially not when that attention wasn't about him, especially not when it made him look small. 3 days after I uploaded the article, quiet, professional, no names, just truth, the blow came. It was a Wednesday morning. The sun hadn't broken through the clouds yet. I was sipping my second cup of coffee, going through emails when I saw it, a subject line that stopped me cold. Rowden Eastman unmasked. It was from an anonymous sender, but the link inside had already gone viral on platforms I didn't even use. I clicked. The video played. There I was, caught in a frame from last Thanksgiving, my voice raised, hands tense, face flushed. It looked bad, really bad. The clip made it seem like I was screaming out of nowhere, a grown man unraveling in front of his family, pounding his fist into a kitchen counter. The caption, "There's a reason no one trusts him anymore." And below that, Zarek's name. He posted it himself. The footage had been cut so tightly that anyone watching it would miss the provocation, the steady baiting, the cornering, the personal jabs whispered just out of frame. The kind of manipulation Zarek had mastered over the years. The part where he slammed the chair into the wall, gone. The part where he accused me of being the failure mom wished she never had. Not a second of it made the cut. Within hours, my inbox lit up with emails. "Hey, Rowden, are you okay? We saw the video. Should we be worried? You know, it might be a good idea to take some time off." And then the message that made my stomach twist. It was from one of the board members at New Haven Consulting. "We're not accusing you of anything, but this attention could damage the firm's reputation. Please resolve this privately or consider stepping back until things settle down." He wanted me gone. Not just from family dinners, not just from the background of birthday photos, from my career, from the name I'd spent years building. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Even the family group chat exploded. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in. It's always been something with him. I remember when he ruined Christmas 2008. Poor Zarek, he's just trying to move on. I didn't respond. I couldn't. At 1:17 p.m., sitting in my office, I had my first panic attack in over a decade. My chest tightened like a vice. Breathing felt like trying to suck air through a straw. My vision blurred. I thought I was dying. Then I remembered that feeling, not new, not foreign. High school. I was 16. Our dad's vintage watch went missing. Zarek said he saw me take it. I hadn't, but everyone believed him, even Dad. I was grounded for a month. Zarek got a steak dinner. That day had never really left me. At 4:42 p.m. I called Jamal. I didn't have to say much. He'd already seen the clip. "Rowden," he said, voice low and steady. "You've been playing fair in a game where he hides knives behind his back. It's time to play smart." By 6:30, Tara texted me, "Sending you the raw footage. It's worse than I thought. Thought you should see what he cut out." There it was. Multiple angles. Full audio. Zarek yelling. Zarek slamming the chair. Zarek screaming, "You'll never be anything without this family." And me? I was reacting, not attacking. Reacting. That night, I sat in the living room while Clarice, my 8-year-old niece, came over with my sister to drop off some books she'd borrowed. She pulled on my sleeve and looked up at me wide-eyed. "Uncle Rowden, why does Uncle Zarek hate you so much?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because that question said everything. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about the stories being passed down. And I wasn't going to let the next generation inherit a lie. I didn't add captions. I didn't explain. I didn't plead for understanding. I just uploaded the unedited footage. The whole thing. Let the world see the truth for itself. And the moment it went live, Zarek did something I never thought he'd do. He showed up at my office, calm as ever, with a grin that said he wasn't done. It was just past 9 a.m., drizzle clinging to the windows of the building like a film of tension no one wanted to acknowledge. My assistant buzzed in, voice uncertain. Um, your brother's here. He says it's urgent. I didn't answer. I just opened the door myself. Zarek stepped in like he owned the place, shoulders back, that same polished charm he used at funerals and fundraisers. He didn't offer a handshake, just placed a manila envelope on the edge of my desk like it was a trophy. Thought we could settle this like men, he said, all syrup and false peace. I didn't reach for the envelope. I leaned back, grabbed the small recorder I kept in my drawer, clicked it on, and set it down between us. He chuckled, slow and mocking. What, you think this ends with a gotcha moment? I looked him square in the face. No, I think it ends with the truth, whether you like it or not. He didn't blink. You're going to regret making this public. You made it war. You made it war when you weaponized family, I said evenly. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening. He tapped the envelope. It's a cease and desist. Take the video down, take the article down, or we both go down. I opened it. The document was laughable, poorly written, unsigned by any actual legal representative, filled with vague threats and misquoted laws. A bluff. I looked back up. You should have had an attorney draft this, or maybe the same one who helped you transfer a $7 million asset without permission. The corner of his smile twitched. You're bluffing. I stood. Come with me. The building's rooftop was empty, slick with light rain, wind tugging at our collars. We stood in silence for a moment, the city stretched out beneath us, vast and gray. Zarek finally spoke. You think you're some kind of martyr? No, I said. I think I'm done playing dumb. He stepped closer, eyes hard. Take the damn video down. You already burned that bridge, I said, calm as stone. All I'm doing is watching it fall. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder. Forensic audit, I told him. Of the vehicle purchase, your little gift. You never expected me to trace the money, but I did. Through Melina's shell accounts, through Callum's consulting firm, every step. He stopped breathing for a second. I saw it. Then he tried to pivot. You don't want to drag the whole family into this. You already did, I replied. You just never thought I'd have the guts to call it what it is. He lunged, not at me, at the phone. I sidestepped, just enough to keep it out of reach. His hands scraped down my shoulder, fingers clawing for control. I shoved him back, firm but not violent. That's when the rooftop door burst open. Security had followed us up. They pulled him away, not harsh, but enough to send a message. You're not family anymore, he spat, eyes full of something between rage and fear. I didn't answer. That night I couldn't sleep, not from anger, just a kind of quiet wakefulness that follows when a long lie finally dies. I opened an old box I hadn't touched in years, tucked in the back of my closet. Inside, among faded notebooks and college letters, was a folded piece of paper, a thank you note. From me to Zarek, handwritten, thanking him for helping with my first semester of law school. But something about it made me pause. The curve of the R in his name. The slant of the ink. It was the same handwriting used to forge my signature on the car transfer document. He hadn't just turned on me recently. He'd been practicing this pattern a long time. I sat with that realization. Not in sadness, in clarity. Forgiveness, I realized, is not the same as reconciliation. Sometimes walking away isn't the weak thing. It's the strongest move left. I opened my phone. Scrolled through my contacts, found Zarek's name, deleted it, not out of anger, out of peace. Then I made one last call that night to the investigator I'd hired weeks ago, back when things still felt salvageable. We're ready to move, I told her. No more delays. And as I set the phone down and looked out at the night skyline, something inside me let go. The last thread had snapped. But even after everything, I still wasn't prepared for what I found the next morning. My inbox was flooded, not with threats, but with support. Dozens of messages, then hundreds. People I hadn't heard from in years. Colleagues, former classmates, a few clients, even strangers. Some were short. Thank you for saying what most of us can't. Some were deeply personal. My older brother did the same thing to me. I thought I was alone. But one message hit harder than the rest. It was just a single sentence. I stayed quiet for too long, too. Thank you for standing up for yourself. I stared at that line longer than I meant to. Something in me softened, not in weakness, but in relief, like I had been holding my breath for years and only now realized I could exhale. The apartment was still dark. I hadn't opened the blinds yet. Morning light was bleeding through, gray and calm. I poured coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened an old voicemail folder on my phone. I knew which one I was looking for. I'd only kept one. It was my dad's voice, a little scratchy, like he'd been clearing his throat. The message wasn't long. Son, don't let them walk over you just because you carry the name better than they do. I closed my eyes. I had forgotten that line. Or maybe I buried it. But hearing it again, especially now, it felt like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. Funny how a voice that's been gone for years can still echo louder than any shouting match. By mid-morning, I heard the knock. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. I opened the door expecting a delivery, maybe Jamal. It was my mother. She was holding her purse like it weighed 1,000 pounds. No umbrella, even though it had just started drizzling again. Her hair was damp. She didn't say anything right away. "Can I come in?" she asked, not looking up. I stepped aside. "Yeah." We sat on opposite ends of the couch. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It just was. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She just stared at her hands, then said, almost to herself, "I was wrong not to stop him." That was all. But for some reason, it was enough. The lawsuit had been filed. Everything Zarek touched related to that car, the money trail, the forged paperwork, even the fake cease and desist, was under review. The car itself had been frozen. He couldn't sell it, move it, or even claim it as his. Zarek had vanished from the spotlight. No social media, no public appearances. Word had gotten around he was thinking of moving. Code in our family for running out of people to lie to. And me, I wasn't celebrating. This wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was control of my name, of my truth, of my silence. People think silence is weakness, but silence is choice. And I finally chose to speak. That Sunday evening, I went for a walk. It had been years since I just walked with no reason. The wind had picked up a bit, carrying that fall kind of chill, crisp but not biting. I passed a small car dealership tucked off the main street. The lights were on inside even though it was nearly sunset. And I saw him. A young man. Couldn't have been more than 20. Dark hoodie, nervous hands. He was standing at a sales desk while an older man, maybe a father or uncle, was talking loudly over him, pressuring, gesturing toward a contract. I didn't mean to stop, but I did. I opened the door, walked in slowly. The bell above rang once. I walked past the glass display and paused beside the young man. He looked at me, wide-eyed, unsure. I leaned in and said quietly, "You don't need to say yes just to keep peace." He looked back at the paper, then at me, and he didn't sign. And just like that, I knew. The chain had finally broken.